Hello, I'm Steve Hartman, and welcome to our new series streaming on CBS News, where every month or so, we'll feature some favorite stories from my nearly 25 years at CBS News. Stories we hope will delight, inspire, and warm the heart. And with Valentine's Day around the corner, we thought for our first installment, we'd take a look at some of our favorite love stories. Starting with a match made in heaven. It had to be made in heaven, because no one on earth could have ever dreamed this up.
There are always a lot of people to thank on a wedding day. But the bride-to-be at this church outside Chicago had one person to thank over all others. A total stranger who made this possible.
I wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for him.
A couple years ago, out of the blue, 27-year-old Heather Kruger was diagnosed with stage 4 liver disease. Doctors said she had just a few months to live.
They immediately told me I was going to need a transplant.
That's not enough time to really find a donor, right?
No. By that time, I could really feel my body shutting down.
Enter our hero. Chris Dempsey is a code enforcement officer for the village of Frankfort, Illinois. What's
going on?
And he says he was in the break room one day when he overheard a guy talking about this woman who needed a liver donor.
I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps and learned there never to run away from anything. So I just said to myself, hey, if I can help, I'm going to help.
Keep in mind, he'd never met Heather, but he got tested to see if he was compatible. And when he found out he was, that's when they finally met for the first time.
We had lunch together, discussed what the whole process was going to be.
Did you buy at least?
No, he bought.
Oh my gosh, this guy's amazing.
Yeah, he bought, what I remember.
Not long after, they checked into the University of Illinois Hospital. The transplant, which involves removing about half of the donor's liver, went off without a hitch. Afterward, Chris and Heather remained close. They got so close, in fact, he was at her wedding last weekend. He had to be, really. What's a wedding without a groom? And so it was that a year and a half after giving her part of his liver, she gave him all her heart.
You're the most incredible man I've ever known. You believe in me, and you make me feel amazing every single day. Because of you, I laugh, smile, and I dare to dream again.
Acts of great kindness are done without expectation. When Chris decided to give an organ to a random stranger, he had no idea he was saving his own wife. But such is the way of goodness. The more likely you are to live for others, the more likely you are to live happily ever after.
After we first told that story, Hallmark turned Chris and Heather's romance into a movie, perhaps the ultimate compliment for any love story. Back in 2014, we met another couple who knew a thing or two about making a marriage last. When you've been together almost 60 years, you find a way, no matter what obstacles life throws in your path.
Remembering 60 years back is hard for anyone, but for Melvin Amrine, the groom in these pictures, it's especially challenging.
Did I invite you to marry me, or did you ask me?
No, you asked me to marry you.
Oh, is that right?
Melvin was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 3 years ago.
Some of that is kind of lost.
For his wife, Doris, it's been hard to watch. But she says something happened recently to remind her that the man she fell in love with is still in there.
It's special because even though the mind doesn't remember everything, the heart remembers. Okay.
It happened the day before Mother's Day, when Melvin, who normally needs help just walking around the block, turned up missing.
A white male by the name of Melvin Amrine.
Police dispatch here in Little Rock, Arkansas put out the call.
He left the house walking approximately 40 minutes ago.
They eventually found him 2 miles from his house.
Police say they get these calls every once in a while of an Alzheimer's patient out wandering aimlessly. But this one was different. When the officers approached Melvin, they say it was clear. He was a man on a mission.
It was absolutely a moment of clarity for him.
Sergeant Brian Grigsby and Officer Troy Dillard say even though Melvin didn't know his address or where he'd come from, he absolutely knew where he was going.
I mean, he was pretty adamant. He wasn't going home until he got those flowers.
Flowers?
That's what he wanted. He wanted flowers for his wife because tomorrow was Mother's Day.
Melvin had bought flowers for his wife every Mother's Day since the birth of their first child, and he wasn't going to disappoint her now.
We had to get those flowers. We had to get them. I didn't have a choice.
So after telling dispatch they were taking the man right home,
And there's a Kroger's.
the officers secretly stopped by the grocery store. Surveillance video shows them helping Melvin pick out the flowers. And when Melvin came up short at the register, look who slipped the cashier the difference. Meanwhile, back at home, a very worried wife was about to get the gift of a lifetime.
As he came up those steps, and I saw those roses and the smile on his face, I just broke inside. I just said, thank you, because I saw his heart.
Amazing what's possible when love becomes an instinct.
Melvin passed away in 2020, but his wife still cherishes their years together, and that very special Mother's Day in particular. When we return, more stories celebrating love and how it can thrive in even the most unlikely circumstances. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us for this special half hour celebrating love. Whatever your relationship status, we trust you'll enjoy these sweet stories from across the country. If you were looking for love in March of 2020, the odds of finding it were not in your favor. With lockdowns closing bars and restaurants and meeting new people all but impossible, singles were seemingly out of luck. But some folks weren't content to keep their hearts quarantined. Take a look.
Turns out social distancing, staying at home, even locking yourself in your apartment cannot prevent love sickness. Take the case of 28-year-old Jeremy Cohen, the Brooklyn man who fell for a girl he saw out his window dancing on her roof.
What did you see in her? You could barely see her.
I saw a shining bright light. I mean, she was happiness in a dark time. So I went out to my deck and I waved hi. She waved hi back. I felt a little bit of a connection.
But there's nothing you can do about it.
Unless you have a drone and the courage to fly your phone number to a total stranger. 23-year-old Tori Signorella texted Jeremy shortly after.
So I asked her out to dinner.
Of course, Tori couldn't come over, so she sat at her table and he at his.
You look beautiful!
They even shared a FaceTime toast.
It felt like a real date, even though we were on FaceTime.
And the date lasted until Tori's phone died.
Until her phone died.
Yeah.
For their second date, this week the couple went for a walk, using a giant bubble Jeremy bought on eBay. Tori was bowled over by the gesture, almost literally. Perhaps next, Jeremy can fly his toothbrush over to her place. I mean, why not? She's already met his mother.
Your mom reached out.
No!
She's so nice.
Why wouldn't she tell me?
So are you guys dating now?
Sure, but we're open to seeing other roof people right now.
It is hard to maintain a long-distance relationship, even if it's just across the street. But we will certainly be rooting for them, because it's their kind of attitude and ingenuity that we're going to need to preserve our humanity.
Tori and Jeremy eventually decided they were better off as friends, but they both say that romance helped them get through some of the roughest and loneliest patches of the pandemic. Sure is nice when you can stay friends with an ex, especially when they live across the street like that. But what do you do with all the mementos of the relationship? In Tori and Jeremy's case, those mementos are mostly digital. But in mine, they're considerably more analog.
Once you get your Valentine, you can start.
In classrooms across America today, kids were pouring their little hearts out,
You are so fun and awesome to hang out with.
trying to think of just the right words.
Your character to me is perfect. You are like a beautiful flower. Your friend James. That's it.
That's it. That's amazing.
I know.
It feels good to give a note like that, but feels even better
to get one.
It makes you like feel nice inside and like warm. I would treasure it and keep it.
For how long?
Forever.
Whether you saved your first love note, or like me, saved all of them, chances are you've got at least a few stashed somewhere. The question is, why? Why break up with someone but keep their mail? And if you do save old love letters, what are you supposed to do with them once you get married? I posed that question to Steve Lewis, a Houston investment advisor. Steve says he and his wife, Allison Triarci, are about as happily married as they come. Which is why, for him, the answer was easy.
I remember actually shredding.
Yo, you shredded them?
Yes.
Ooh, wow.
I just said, I don't need this, and move on.
His wife, however,
I think I could find a few.
that's a different story.
Good morning, Christine.
Allison is a reporter and anchor at the CBS affiliate in Houston. And when she told me she had some old love letters,
This is where I keep everything.
I was very curious to see if she'd saved any from this one old boyfriend in particular.
We have to climb.
A guy she dated almost 15 years ago and hasn't seen since. Until now.
Oh, look how you wrote the sentences. The key to my heart. How can you throw that away?
How can she? How can I?
So you have ones from her.
Yeah, you want to see them?
Please.
I got at least a couple dozen. Some really silly, some really heartfelt.
See, I love you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you should shred.
Okay.
That's one man's opinion. Here's another.
I think it's really important to save the past and to save love letters.
Bill Shapiro put together a book called Other People's Love Letters.
Yeah, I don't know how you could possibly get rid of these. Love letters are this totally biased time capsule where people remember you the way you want to be remembered.
How could I not save something that somebody thought I was all of these things? There are times when I know I'm not these things.
But I wonder, if you keep it, when do you look at it? Am I in New York on a business trip and you thought, well, this would be a good time?
He made some good points. But before I asked to borrow his shredder, I asked why he really thought I should get rid of those letters.
Honestly?
Yeah.
I kind of like you now, so I don't care.
I guess I'd be remiss not to thank Allison's husband, Steve, and my Valentine, Andrea, for being such good sports about that the first time we aired that story. And hopefully the second time, too. When we come back, a story about love everlasting. Stay with us. Welcome back to our Valentine show. Thanks for being with us. We hope you're enjoying this special half hour featuring some of our favorite love stories. On Valentine's Day, people generally like to show their affection with flowers or chocolates or cards. But what about showing your feelings with something a little more permanent? Well, here's a story about a guy who cherishes his Valentine every day of the year, and in a monumental way.
Around Starkville, Mississippi, retired mail carrier Charles Evans is known mostly for his questionable taste in lawn furnishings. But I came here for something undeniably beautiful.
The man with the plan.
Charles met his wife Louise back in 1949.
When you looked at her, it's like,
whoa,
like electrical shock.
Really?
I guess it's love.
To Charles, true love is so powerful, nothing can stop it.
That's a big four-letter word.
Nothing.
Straighten it out.
Which is why, after she died in 2011, after 60 years of marriage, he decided a grave marker wasn't enough, that their love deserved more than a monument. What their love needed was a museum. And so, in a little outbuilding behind his house, Charles Evans built just that.
This is our memorabilia area.
Inside, he's got the shoe shine stand he was working at when he met her. He's got all the music they used to dance to. And he's got 4 walls packed solid with pictures, documenting every significant occasion.
And this was, we went out to lunch.
And most every insignificant occasion.
This was a different place at lunch.
Different lunch.
And this, she didn't like that one because they caught her laughing with food in her mouth.
Needless to say, he doesn't get a whole lot of visitors, which is fine by Charles.
This is our last dance.
In fact, you get the sense he almost enjoys his alone time more. On slow days, he slow dances with Louise.
I guess I'm trying to relive our life. Would you think?
Maybe.
I don't know. It's so hard to explain, you know. But it's not a suffering memory. It's a beautiful memory, you know.
Sometimes people try to tell Charles to move on. But in his mind, why would you want to make a bunch of new memories
Us again.
when the old ones are still so good?
Yeah, she was lovely. That's a beautiful picture there.
After we first told that story, hundreds of people went to visit Charles's museum in Starkville. Now he gets to share his love for Louise with whoever happens by and bask in the joy those beautiful memories bring. Clearly, Charles would have done anything for his beloved Louise. And we found that same level of devotion in Anderson, South Carolina, where we met a man who hit the road to help his wife when she needed him most. Take a look.
One way or another, it had to end like this.
Are you ready?
One way or another, Larry Swilling knew his wife Jimmy Sue would eventually be hospitalized with a failing kidney. He knew he'd have tears. Only thing he didn't know was whether they'd be happy or sad. When we first met Larry a year ago, he was desperately trying to rewrite his wife's final chapter.
I'm going to get you a kidney.
Since she needed a kidney and he had no shame on the matter,
I don't care what people think.
Larry set out to find an organ donor on his own.
I sure could use your kidney.
Never mind that most people won't give panhandlers their pocket change, let alone their vital organs.
I need a kidney.
Larry, at the age of 77, started walking all over his hometown of Anderson, South Carolina, basically begging for a kidney.
I had to do something. She looks after me, and I look after her.
After 57 years of marriage,
We've been together so long.
their love is so palpable it practically melts you in your seat. Which is probably why, after our first story aired, thousands of people called to offer their kidneys.
There's a mighty bunch of good people out there is wanting to help.
More than 100 of that mighty bunch went through the testing to see if they were a match. And would you believe,
Well, how are you doing?
one was.
Oh my goodness.
After a full year of searching, this week, Larry Swilling finally met his miracle. She's a 41-year-old retired Navy lieutenant commander named Kelly Weaverling.
Have you ever just had a feeling that was just such a strong gut feeling that you just went with your instinct because you just knew it was right?
That's what happened.
That's exactly what happened. I could do something to give this family hope.
The surgery was Wednesday morning, and by Wednesday afternoon, Larry was accosting doctors.
You mind?
Absolutely.
Everything went perfectly.
I love you.
Now Larry says he has two new missions: to find other donors for other people, and to find a way to properly thank the woman who gave him his wife back.
There's not enough words.
Larry's struggling for a way to thank you.
Just take care of your wife. Just take care of her.
Doubt that'll be a problem.
Oh, I'm fine now. I love you too, baby.
Larry did take good care of Jimmy Sue, and she lived 4 more happy years after we first shared that story. Larry says she would have died long before, if not for Kelly's very generous donation, and he's so grateful for that extra time together. When we return, another story about lovebirds caring for each other in sickness and in health. And when I say lovebirds, I mean lovebirds. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. We've got one more love story to share with you. When things run afoul in most relationships, a lot of new partners fly the coop. But not so with the pair you're about to meet. In fact, their love almost gives me goosebumps.
At the New England Wildlife Center in Massachusetts, they treat thousands of injured animals every year. But Executive Director Zach Mertz says one recent case stands out from all the rest.
This was a first for us. Here's the goose.
The patient was a Canada goose they named Arnold. Arnold had a badly damaged foot.
And as we're doing it, we're prepping him for anesthesia, giving him meds. We hear this faint tapping at the door.
Tapping at the door?
Yeah. We all kind of turned around simultaneously and we're pretty shocked.
Zach says it was a visitor for Arnold.
We don't allow that, but we definitely had to make an exception in this case.
An exception for a spouse.
Don't worry, he's in good hands.
How did she know that her mate was in here?
My only guess is that she saw us capture him the day before, and he was probably hunking in the cage overnight.
After surgery, the staff moved Arnold to the floor for recovery, where his mate, who they named Amelia, comforted and preened him. The avian embodiment of in sickness and in health.
Geese do mate for life, but if something dreadful happens to one, the other typically remarries. But not Amelia. She wasn't leaving her man. No honkin' way.
Throughout his convalescence, now in its 4th week, they've been putting Arnold in a pen out back, an hour daily for fresh air. And every time, without fail, Amelia comes running to her gander, marches right into his cage in full-throated surrender.
I think it really gave us all a new respect for how social these animals are and sort of the depth that they have in their emotions.
I know this isn't your field per se, but is this love?
You know, I don't know if it's love, but they really make each other calm and happy, and I think we could all learn something from them.
Arnold was released this past week, back into the wings of his beloved. They probably won't return, but hopefully their example will stay with us, because what's good for the goose is crucial for mankind.
Thanks so much for joining us for this Valentine special. We'll be back next month with another half hour of our favorite stories. We certainly hope to see you then. And in the meantime, wishing you and all your loved ones a very happy Valentine's Day.